Ever feel like the resources and advice out there for women are missing something essential? I thought so too, which is why more than 6 years ago, I created She Said, She Said. I'm Laura Cox Kaplan, and after 3 decades in communications and then advocacy and now juggling motherhood and entrepreneurship, trust me, friend, I get it. Making a real impact takes more than just passion. It takes the right mindset, the right skills, the right investments, and the right community. On this show, we dive deep with incredible women from all walks of life who have been there. We uncover the secrets to building influence, navigating tricky relationships, and staying true to ourselves even when it's tough. And let's face it, it often is. I also throw in my own favorite productivity and life hacks, things that have shifted my perspective and might help you too. Wherever you are in your journey, my goal here is to leave you inspired to define success your way and to help you build the confidence you need to tackle your biggest goals. Subscribe today and let's unlock your full potential, your confidence, and your greatest influence. Hey friend, welcome to the podcast. Have you ever thought of Mother Teresa as an entrepreneurial genius? Probably not. But no joke, she built an organization that actually spread across 120 countries with more than 600 locations without a single fundraiser, without a business plan, and without an investor pitch. Talk about doing more with less. This is Women's History Month, and I am shaking things up a bit here at She Said, She Said podcast with our first ever male guest. My friend, Jim Towey, isn't just any guy, though. He was Mother Teresa's personal lawyer, problem solver, and also a close friend and confidant of hers for more than a decade. And Jim's own journey is interesting. He started as a Capitol Hill staffer who originally thought meeting Mother Teresa would actually make him sound cooler at parties, and he actually admits to this. Instead, he found himself pulled into her orbit and actually entrusted with protecting one of the world's most beloved figures. Friend, what I love about this conversation, what I think you'll love about it, is how Jim peels back the layers on Mother Teresa that no one really talks about. Her incredible business savvy, her leadership style, and how she grew from a one-woman show to nearly 4,000 women serving the poorest of the poor all across the world. Jim has written a fabulous book. It's called To Love and Be Loved. In it, he tells his whole amazing story, and I promise you our chat today will completely flip your thinking about leadership and influence and what you thought you knew about Mother Teresa. So let's dive in. This is episode 323 with my friend, Jim Towey. Jim, welcome to She Said, She Said.
Well, this is a thrill. Thank you, Laura.
Well, it's a thrill for me as well. You are here for a couple of firsts. You are the first male guest that I have had on this podcast, not because we don't like men, we do, but I'm really excited for you to be the first and to talk about somebody who I think folks don't know enough about. So, Jim Towey, welcome. I'm really happy to have you.
Glad to be here. Really am.
You have the very interesting distinction of having been Mother Teresa's lawyer, her counselor, her chief problem solver for more than a decade. Tell us about how you got connected with Mother Teresa.
Well, I guess I won the lottery in that I was overseas on a trip for Senator Mark Hatfield, and I wanted to meet Mother because I felt like there's one person who's living her faith. I wasn't, but I admired her from afar. So on the way back from a Southeast Asia trip for Senator Hatfield, I swung through Calcutta. I happened to be in the right place at the right time because I met her. It was beautiful. And then, she needed a lawyer to start doing things in the U.S. because she was opening homes for people with AIDS. Uh-huh. And so there I was at the right place at the right time. And I was free, which she liked. And I think she saw that I was pretty lost, and so she also started to mother me. So it was a great arrangement. And I was 28 years old, and I was starstruck.
You were not married. You were single at the time. You were,
Right.
as you describe it, you were lost. You talk a lot about this in your book. You've written a fabulous book, by the way. It's called To Love and Be Loved, and it is a book about your experience with Mother Teresa. So let's talk a little bit about what happened. You were a congressional staffer, as I said. You weren't married. You go to Calcutta, you meet Mother Teresa, and you were maybe looking at this as maybe something of a junket. And for those who listen to this podcast who have worked on Capitol Hill, they fully appreciate this idea of these
Right.
little adventures, these little junkets. I'm not sure they get to do those as much anymore. But back when you and I were coming up in the world and working on Capitol Hill, this was a thing. Maybe talk a little bit about your mindset and how you entered into this trip.
Well, I wish I could say all my intentions were pure. I thought it would be cool. I thought it would make me, more interesting in cocktail conversation to say I was with Mother Teresa last week in Calcutta. I can't say that my motivations were all great, but I was looking for something more meaningful in life than I had. And she seemed to have a key to it because she was everything I wasn't. I mean, when I met her, she was so focused, energetic, intentional, alive, cheerful, just everything I wasn't. And so the minute I saw her, I was like, she's unlike anybody I've ever seen in my life. And so I wanted to be around her. And then she asked me to go see her nuns in Washington to tell them hello. I didn't even know she had them. And of course, they were in Anacostia. There would be no reason I'd ever go over there. So yeah, it was quite the experience of meeting a person and you don't realize at the time it's going to redirect your life, but it did.
Yeah. How did you get from the point of, you ended up volunteering, or you would find yourself in these experiences where you weren't necessarily going into them with the intention of volunteering. Like you were just going to do a pass by at her home in Anacostia. You had no intention of, hanging out there and taking care of people who were not just sick, they were on death's door. They were suffering from AIDS. This was before there was a cure or medication or any of those sorts of things. These people were desperately, desperately ill. So sort of talk us through what happened and what that moment was when you realized that you were going to devote your life and service to working with her in a more formalized way.
Well, it was funny, when this mother asked me to go to her home for the dying in Calcutta, I thought I was getting a tour there. So that's why I went. I had no intention of touching anybody there. And the only reason I went back to volunteer because the sister shamed me into it. She saw that I'd just come in. She knew that I had been sent by Mother. And so she said, go clean that guy in bed 46. I was too proud to admit to her I didn't want to do it. There wasn't a part of me that did want to do it. But I was busted. I couldn't weasel out of it. I couldn't say, well, I'd love to help, but I've got to leave. I just walked in, so, and the same thing in the soup kitchen. I wanted to go say hi to the sisters. I didn't want to work with the homeless. They frightened me. And so it was a very gradual thing. There wasn't a choir of angels, but I think those encounters with the poor, Mother talked about God hidden in the disguise of the poor. This is an Old Testament and New Testament realization of how God comes in disguise to people. So for me, it was a very gradual awareness that the poor had something to teach me, that they had a gift to give me. I thought I was going to be the one doing all the giving, but I started to discover in these relationships in the AIDS home that they had a lot to teach me about life. So yeah, I was hooked. And then I was single, then the nuns just ran me ragged, picking up people at airports, getting medicines, doing errands. And I was happy to be used like that. And they taught me a lot about joy and service.
Yeah. It was funny as I was reading your book, clearly the nuns who she sent you to meet were expecting you. Now, she didn't have a cell phone to make a phone call to say, hey, I'm sending you young Jim. Why don't you redirect him? How did they just knew? Presumably she did this often. I mean, how did they know that they were to put you to work?
Laura, I never got the backstory on that, because I had the same question. They seemed to expect me, and they put me to work as if I had known them my whole life, and I didn't. But that's how Mother operated. She had such confidence in people, even when the person themselves wasn't feeling like they could do the job. she would send a young woman in Calcutta and say, okay, you're going to Venezuela to open a home there. I can't drive. We'll learn how to drive. I can't do this. Just go learn how, she had such confidence in people. She saw in them their potential. And I guess in me, she felt I might be able to help her. And Senator Hatfield was great about it. And so, yeah, I look back at it now and it was a grace from God. I don't know how else to describe how I got the break I did. Although I joked, I joked with Mother at the end of her life. I said, I wish you had read me my rights when I'd met you. Because back then I had the right to play golf. I had the right to hang out on weekends and do nothing, So yeah, she did kind of hijack my life, I guess, a little.
And she ended up introducing you to your wife in a manner of speaking, right?
Yeah, matter of speaking, yes, in her home for people with AIDS. And that starts on page 84 in the book. And yeah, Mary's outstanding. You know her. And she too was similarly looking for meaning in life and purpose. And so she saw the same thing I saw in Mother, and she went to Calcutta for 2 months. In fact, her first night in Calcutta, she arrived late, and she was going to stay at the YWCA hostel there. And she slept on the pavement the first night because she got there, the door was locked. So that was Mary's first night in Calcutta, was on the pavement.
Oh my God.
So she was there for
Wow.
2 months doing this humble work, and she was too intimidated to go see Mother. She didn't want to bother her. And so she would always just behold her from afar in the chapel or whenever she saw her. So that was Mary. And then we meet up. So I can't ruin that for your listeners on what happened next. But I guess, spoiler alert, we've been married 33 years. So there you have that. 5 kids later.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Amazing children. Okay, let's back up a little bit and talk a bit more about Mother Teresa's leadership. You describe in the book something that I think will really surprise people, that she was so entrepreneurial. And I think people hear Mother Teresa and they think, okay, saint, this incredible person, someone to be admired and looked up to and a real inspiration for people. But an entrepreneur? Really?
Yeah.
Explain what you mean by that. So interesting.
I mean, I think she was the last to know she was, because when she set out, she was on her own. I mean, think about this, Laura. Here she is in this patriarchal country of India, a European nun, after the English had just left and there was so much tension, the partitioning of India, the flood of refugees into the city, the famine from 42 and 43, the aftermath of the war, all of these factors. And then God asks her, she's convinced, he commands her to go and work with the poor in the streets. She had no money, she had no helpers, nothing. What she had were schoolgirls that she had taught and faith that she believed if God asked this, he'd equip her. So she starts out, she gets one girl, she gets a second. They're all 16, 18 years old, and they go and live with her. Imagine this. And they had nothing. They were living in a top floor of this wealthy family's home, 3rd floor room. And then it was 12, then it was 26 in that home with one bathroom, which 26 women in one bathroom, Laura, I think is her first miracle because I don't know how that worked, but it did. So then they moved to the mother house, but so she built it one by one by one. The Bengali word ek, 111. She said it all the time. It was whether it was lifting up the poor, whether it was this woman joining her. Well, then she had a governance structure with 5 counselors. She made all this up. And then she had regions after she started expanding into other countries, because 15 years after she started, she had her first out of India house. By the time of her death, 3,980 women had followed her into the slums.
That's amazing.
In 120 countries. And, Coca-Cola, or, they have a huge MBA operation of trying to deal with these multinational complications of language and culture. She had the sisters go to these countries, learn 10 words a day, go out there. Sometimes they'd have a native speaker, sometimes they wouldn't. It was just, when you look back at it and you go, it's truly a miracle. How did she do this? Because to be in 120 countries with over 600 homes by the time she died, it all started with that first poor person that she touched in December of 1948. Amazing.
I mean, it blows my mind, and it is a miracle. At the same time, like, I'm sort of left scratching my head. How did she know how to structure this? I mean, it's truly what made her so remarkable, is that she was able to figure this out and then scale it.
Exactly. And she did it with the help of a lot of very smart women around her, because those were the ones that she leaned on. They kind of figured it out together. But if you went to her little room that she slept in, and she had these little boxes, they were like 6 inches across, and they were each region, and she'd put the mail in each of these boxes and sort of get this, Laura. She kept the books until very, very recently. Missionaries of Charity, all their books were by hand, pencil and paper. And that's how they kept their books. And they just had a system of discipline. She had sisters and women that were trustworthy, and they had the ability to go, and they were fearless. I mean, if you look at the Missionaries of Charity today, these women are still in Gaza. They never left Gaza. They're still in Ukraine, never left Ukraine. Haiti, they've been there for 40 years. They're right in the heart. Syria, you can go down the list of every hot spot in the world, and the Missionaries of Charity are there. So it really is, I find it absolutely extraordinary at how she did it as an entrepreneur to build this business model, the Missionaries of Charity, have the money without ever fundraising.
Yeah.
So she refused to fundraise. She had me as her lawyer keep people from fundraising in her name. She said, "I prefer the insecurity of divine providence." So how's that for your capital raise, huh? Yeah, God's going to provide. So she said she preferred the insecurity of divine providence. I was with her when someone offered her $100,000 a year for the rest of her life. She said, "Nope, if I accept that, I'll depend on that money. I don't want to do that." So she truly waited, but people made gifts. I mean, people figured her out. Like, here are women, Laura, no salaries, no health insurance, no pension. They get a home visit. They go home and see their family every 10 years. I mean, this is a tremendously dedicated brand, right? This would be like the Marines, I guess, if you were to use a military analogy. And so, but they were fearless women that were in love with God and were going to go do, and they were in love with Mother Teresa. She was that dynamic a leader.
I'm reminded, as you're talking about this, of a story that I found so fascinating in the book. I don't want to give too much of the book away, but a little bit of the book will sort of entice people to want to get the book. There's a story that you tell about the reason why she needed a lawyer. And you've alluded to that fact in that, protecting her image and keeping people from using it inappropriately. And there were a couple of examples. One in particular, I'll let you pick which one you want to talk about. But I think it helps to illustrate why she needed you and a little bit more about what your job was working for her.
Well, a lot of people were trying to make money off of the use of her name, some innocently, some not so innocently. So usually a letter would stop them. I mean, they were selling the Mother Teresa breath spray that would keep the demons and bad breath out. And
that was my favorite.
Yeah, mine too. But there are others, and then there were people that were like, someone would die and leave money to Mother Teresa. They would just like die and say, "I'm going to leave it to her. I trust her." They didn't even know her, And so then the family would not be happy about this little change in the plan of the will and contest it. So we had some of those going on. And then sometimes we had problems with bishops and priests that were trying to use her name to further their own diocesan agendas. And so, I mean, President Bush used to joke about that. He'd say, "Towey was Mother Teresa's lawyer. What kind of world do we live in when even she had to have a lawyer?" But, well, she liked to sue people. No, I'm kidding. She didn't like to sue people. She didn't want to even go to court. And not many people knew that, thank goodness, because they would have taken advantage of it, because I would threaten, but it was all bark and no bite, because Mother wasn't going to go fight over money. That just wasn't her at all. But and then I helped her with visas. Because the sisters coming from India, many of them were Indian nationals. Back then, it was very difficult. When she died, they actually created the religious worker visa in her honor, and that's been now in place since 1997. So, but before that, it was a hassle to get sisters in here for more than 6 months. So there was a lot of different things, but she wanted me to do hands-on work with the poor too, and so that's why I worked in that AIDS home. So that taught me as much about life as anything I've had since, other than marriage. Marriage teaches us, doesn't it, Laura?
Oh, marriage and parenthood, yes. I'm not sure which one. I actually am sure. I'm sure it's more parenthood. I've learned more as a parent. But marriage is good too. It's all good.
Yeah. So I
was better than good.
Yeah, same lessons. But I think too with Mother Teresa, what people don't appreciate is when she was forming her community and these young women were joining that had been her students in the Loretto Convent, which was kind of a privileged school for Indian kids, she had from all castes. She had people that were Brahmin caste. And they were all living under one roof. She was doing in the convent what could not be done in the hundreds and hundreds of years of Indian history, having all these different castes come together, live together in charity. And so, I got to know that first group, and these were stubborn, strong-willed, convicted women. Well, they had to be. They had to be. And so, and Mother wasn't perfect either. I hate these sappy accounts that make her out to be this kind of wimpy kind. She was fierce. She was gritty, Albanian, tough, and tender. The mother's tenderness and kindness and gentle. It was just, she was the full package of womanhood, and very proudly so. She never felt in the slightest bit, that she wasn't the equal of a man, and she got along with men great, but she was primarily living in a world with women, for women, because these were mothers with little children that had been abandoned and by the fathers, and these were the dying, which, Mother was by the bedside. So yeah, she was the real deal. She was all human.
So to that point about being human and having this tremendous responsibility and, a tremendous schedule that she kept every single day. And when you met her, I believe she was already about 75 years old.
Yeah.
And she was
That's right.
still keeping this incredibly demanding schedule. Maybe talk about how she maintained her resilience, how she, kept from getting burned out, for lack of a better term. I realize that's sort of a secular way, and if you're moved by the Spirit, you're probably not going to be burned out because you're living your values. However, as human beings and as a 75-year-old woman, there are limitations as we get older to how much we can do and how much energy we have. Talk about how she dealt with that, managed that, or what that looked like for her.
Well, she prayed, and I think she derived a great deal of strength from her faith that made her believe she could go on when her body was tiring. She had a motto that said, always choose the hardest, which I think was a way of challenging herself to new heights. And spiritually, God equipped her for the work that she did. However, physically, she had 5 heart attacks. She had malaria dozens of times. She broke her shoulder, her hips, her 3 ribs, and then she had these spiritual interior darkness. So she had many, many trials, challenges, difficulties, and but she just was in love with people, in love with God. She was in love with life, and I think she derived a lot of energy from the challenges she faced and the people that were around her. I think they really stimulated her.
You talk about her humanness in the book. I'd love for you to share with the audience a little bit of maybe some areas of her humanness that she struggled with. You mentioned she was not just gritty, but she was very stubborn. And sometimes stubbornness can get us in trouble. Maybe talk a little bit about how she dealt with her own internal struggles that she might have from time to time.
Yeah, she was famously impatient and stubborn. She could get angry. I mean, she sinned. I mean, saints sin. She sought forgiveness from God, but she could correct with anger. She could scold a sister. I mean, she scolded me one time. I thought I was going to turn to a pillar of salt. I'd screwed up, and she pointed it out. And it was the first time she did that. But a sister came up to me and goes, "Oh, that means Mother likes you if she scolds you." I thought, "Oh, great." So, but it was.
What did that scolding look like, though, Jim? I mean, how did
it looked like she put her finger out in front of her like this. She says, "No, don't do that. Let them come here." And and I was just, I was stunned, because the tone of voice was so different. But she had to be that way, I guess, in the religious life to maintain the discipline of religious life and to keep the sisters focused. So yeah, but she loved poetry. She loved to sing. She loved chocolate. She was, but that stubbornness and impatience, God over time perfected into perseverance and courage and conviction. And she had to have that. When she opened that home for the dying at the Kali Temple guest house, where they gave it to her since it had been overrun by robbers, they let her have it for the dying. I mean, people were throwing rocks through the windows. They were threatening to kill her. You had to have womanly courage to stand there and just say, well, she said to them, well, if it killed me, I'll go home to God now. She had that, she was ready to go. She told me at the end of her life, when I said, Mother, I knew I'd never see her again. I said, Mother, I'm going to really miss you. And she said, well, I've got my bags packed, which I love that expression. She had her bags packed. She was ready to go, but I think she trusted that if God was going to put her in these situations, he'd equip her for battle. And he did.
You talk about her having an incredible sense of humor. That's a great example, having her bags packed and joking a bit about death in the
Yeah.
end. Maybe talk a little bit about her sense of humor.
Yeah, she loved to laugh, and she loved to poke fun at the sisters, and she poked fun at herself. She saw the celebrity that attended her life from the time, really from the mid-1970s on, but after the Nobel Peace Prize, she became like a living icon of worldwide compassion. And because she was such a lover of people of all faiths or none at all, she said that she loved all religions, but was in love with her own. And it wasn't just a slogan or, some kind of jingo. It was truly a core conviction of hers that she saw the divine image in everybody. And she just didn't get caught up in all the sectarian strife, any of the politics. She tried to avoid all of that, even as her celebrity grew. So she suffered the celebrity, and she'd laugh at it. And she was riding with Malcolm Muggeridge one time, and she sees a billboard of her face in the book that had come out. And she just pointed out and she goes, well, there she is. It was just, I one time said, Mother, does all this praise affect you? And she just said, no. She just gestured how it went in this ear and it went out in that one. She goes, I know who I am, and I think that humbleness of hers, her humility made her able to cope with that. But she was very, she liked to tease her sisters, imitate them. And I think the laughing helped her deal with the misery that was around her, in Calcutta. If you didn't laugh, you'd be crying all the time. And she cried too. In her early journal, she said, I had a good cry today. This was a woman who felt things, but her skin was thick enough that she could handle the criticisms. And I spent a chapter in the book on the critics, but she was able to deal with the meanness that was around her. And even today now, they troll her on the internet with a bunch of things that aren't true. So yeah, I guess when you're a public figure, I guess you're fair game for all this kind of nonsense.
Sure, but the fact that she was so seemingly bemused by the whole thing and kind of...
Yeah, she didn't like to have her photo taken. It was a pet peeve. She didn't like it. Well, of course, everyone wanted to take a photo of her. And she said, I mean, this is Catholic talk, but she said every time she had her photo taken, a soul got out of purgatory. So she felt like, she was making, but it was a sacrifice to her. And I remember in Memphis one time, because I traveled with her some, and people here's their chance to meet her, and they would just come with their video camera to shoot her, and she'd just put her hand up, because she's like, meet me, don't just take my photo, so she was very, she could laugh at those things, and I think she was able to help the sisters laugh at themselves, and if they didn't, I think they would have gone mad with the challenges in the work, so I tell some of the stories about it, but yeah, she really does. She was balanced. Laura, every day, midday, she'd go get a siesta. She'd walk around the poor and go inside and rest. And she made sure her sisters got 3 straight weeks of break from the work so they could go and have a retreat and recharge. So she was a very balanced person. She had friends that were wealthy. She had friends that were poor. She just didn't see the world in terms of the rich and the poor. That's not how she saw the world.
We talk a lot about this concept of influence and how why people gravitate toward and want to work with, want to follow, want to be part of someone else's orbit or infrastructure. Can you sort of talk about, and you have been, obviously a lot of this is illustrative of her influence, but maybe any other observations that you had about what made her influential?
Well, she was charismatic, to be sure. And she just, over time, she had grown so much in the virtues that she radiated goodness. I mean, people saw it. That's why Princess Diana, I wrote about her, and Hillary Clinton, people that were really drawn to Mother, that saw that same goodness I saw, well, that the world saw, really. President Reagan. She had that incredible dedication to her faith, that she saw herself as nothing and God as everything. So yeah, I think she was very in aware that God was at work through her. Even she used to say to me, pray that God uses you without consulting you.
Mm.
And I think she said that because she often felt used without being consulted, you know? She'd be in meetings, not really even know what to do or what to say. She met Castro. She wanted to send her sisters to Cuba because she was a missionary at heart. So she wanted to go into as many countries as possible. Well, nobody was getting into Cuba then. And so she sees Castro, and Castro says, well, we don't have any poor people in Castro. I mean,
In
in
Cuba.
Cuba, I'm sorry. Yeah, no poor people in Cuba, right. But Mother doesn't take the bait. She just looks at him and says, well, you have old people. I can come and care for your old people. So she was the best leader. And I worked for a president, governors, senators.
Right.
She just inspired by her example. People wanted to be around her. She brought out the best in you. I mean, I was my very best around her. Sometimes in my low moments in my marriage, where I'm angry with Mary or, we've just had some petty dispute over something, I will hearken back to think, I was so good with Mother. Why can't I be good in this situation here? It's like, I want my mother to have her around. Because when you were with her, you went harder. You just seemed to be getting some of the energy she got. So she was inspirational. She led by example. She did the hardest work. She cleaned the latrines at the home for the dying. She had a room above the kitchen where the heater was. That was the boiler room. So she really did never ask to those women anything she wasn't willing to do. But as she got older, she taught them a lot about letting oneself be loved, which is why I titled the book To Love and to Be Loved, because that really was her operating principle, that if the sisters understood that that was their greatest need, to love and to be loved, and if they truly believed that, they could conquer the world.
Yeah. Jim, let's talk a bit about your work, which you're doing now, which she inspired. Let's talk a little bit about what you do today and how you're essentially continuing to live that inspiration that she created for you.
Well, when she was still alive in 1995 and 96, I went to Calcutta. I talked to her about assisted suicide. It worried me because I understand why it's attractive and people want control, and we do such a terrible time of care at the end of life. Well, she introduced it to me in Kaligat, that those people were kept comfortable, they were clean, they were known by name, they were loved. We've over medicalized care at the end of life, and we kind of make it so confusing for people about medical decision making. So I developed 5 Wishes, an advanced directive. Some of your listeners, I'm sure, have heard of 5 Wishes because there's 43 million copies circulating in America, which I'm very proud of.
Wow, amazing.
Since we don't advertise, really, we don't. It's been word of mouth. It's in 33 languages now. So we train healthcare professionals. We have training programs through Aging with Dignity. So I, with her blessing and encouragement, she wrote a letter to that effect. I started Aging with Dignity in 1996, and here we are almost 30 years later.
Amazing.
And we're the largest advanced care planning organization, and that's also been EC 111. The first 2 women that worked with me that were brave enough to join me had to bring chairs to come to work the first day. We had no office furniture. They then helped me carry a donated conference table to the office. I mean, it was pretty bare. So I tried to think, well, what would Mother do in these situations? But those women were very brave, Mary Jane and Pam. And then we've had so many others in the years. So yeah, we do advanced care planning, and we also promote a hopeful vision of end-of-life care, Laura, that stops short of assisted suicide, euthanasia, because I worried about the right to die will become the duty to die,
Right.
and for the disabled and others. So people can disagree on the subject. I prefer to just promote a hopeful vision of end-of-life care. I'm a big fan of hospice, palliative care, and I'm a big fan of people planning for these things in advance so that they aren't caught off guard and all of a sudden mom has a stroke and we don't know what to do, because that can be really a very deep suffering for families.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Jim, related to the book, I know that you do not benefit from the proceeds of this book. Talk about where the money goes.
Well, because we prohibit fundraising for the Missionaries of Charity, I couldn't say all of it goes to the Missionaries of Charity. So I say the royalties go to Missionaries of Charity and works aligned with her lifetime. But the reality is the overwhelming majority's gone to the Missionaries of Charity, which we're proud to do. Mary and I are very happy about that.
Yeah.
And it's nothing. I mean, I have such a debt to Mother. It's like credit card debt. I can't even keep up with the interest payments, much less the debt itself. So I'm trying to pay it back. Agent with Dignity is great. My son now, Jamie, is working here with me. I've got Paul Malley back in Tallahassee, 25 years there. We've got a great loyal staff that are very dedicated to this work. And so Jamie is branching out now with some of our advocacy here in Washington, and our donors have been very generous.
Yeah, I love that. I will include links to the book as well as where people can find you. I am so grateful for the time today. I have loved this conversation.
Well, I've loved being with you, Laura. I'm honored that I've broken the gender barrier. I mean, my mom raised the five of us, and I had a twin sister and two others, so I kind of grew up in a woman's household. So I felt like I was equipped for your show.
Meant to be. It was just meant to be.
Exactly. Thank you for having me on, and I admire you. 7 years of you doing this and 300 plus podcasts later, you're really doing a great work. God bless you for that.
I appreciate that. So, friend, as we celebrate Women's History Month, I'm reminded how vital it is to study all of these extraordinary leaders like Mother Teresa. Her journey from a single mission to a global organization offers us so many timeless lessons in purpose-driven leadership, in resilience, and in entrepreneurship that can really transform how we approach our own challenges today. I am so grateful to my friend Jim Towey for sharing these intimate insights that, frankly, we rarely get to hear. I know I learned a lot from the conversation, and I hope you did too. If you enjoyed today's episode, I would love to continue the conversation with you. So be sure to follow me on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook, where I share additional insights, behind-the-scenes content, and some opportunities to connect with you and our broader community of purpose-driven women. And if you found value in today's discussion, I hope you'll take a moment to leave a review wherever you get your podcast. Your reviews help other women discover our conversations and actually help me grow this community. Until next week, friend, I'm Laura Cox Kaplan, reminding you that influence comes in many forms. Let's use it to make a positive difference. Thanks so much for listening. And remember, She Said, She Said podcast is a weekly production of She Said, She Said Media. I'll see you next week.